Deep down, you know what you have to do. You know the next step you have to take, but you're afraid it'll hurt worse than the pain you're currently in. In fact, you've already convinced yourself that you're not in that much pain at all. There's a guy walking by a house. The farmer was sitting on his front porch, and the farmer's dog was laying down beside him. But the dog was just moaning and howling. And so the guy asked the farmer, he said, "What's wrong with your dog?" The farmer says, "Well, he's laying on an L." And the guy asks, "Well, why doesn't he move?" And the farmer replies, "It must not hurt bad enough just yet." So the question is, what nail are you sitting on that's causing you pain, but not enough pain to actually move? It turns out the prophet Haggai had something to say about this exact situation. You see, most successful business owners that I know are living a contradiction. They're making good money, but they're feeling broke. They're working harder, but they aren't satisfied with the results. And even though they have all this external markers of success, something inside just feels hollow. So maybe that sounds familiar, but here's what I've discovered. There's a difference between hurt and harm that most people completely miss. And once you understand this difference, life changes, business changes. But before I explain what that means for your business, let me tell you about something that happened 2,500 years ago. God had the prophet Haggai, and he had him deliver a message to a group of people who are in this exact situation. Successful people, hardworking people, people who should have been thriving but weren't. And the diagnosis was shocking and the solution was simple, but most people ignored it then, just like a lot of people ignore it today. But here's what's really happening in your business right now. You're avoiding something you know you need to do, but you haven't done it yet. Maybe it's hiring that person or firing that person. Maybe it's raising your prices, or maybe it's saying no to the wrong clients. Maybe it's finally building those systems. But whatever it is, it likely already popped into your head as soon as I said you have something you have to do that you know you need to do, but you haven't done it yet. So whatever that is, you've convinced yourself that making that change will be too painful, too risky, too hard. But what if I told you that avoiding that pain is actually causing you more harm than you realize? What if the very thing you're trying to avoid is the exact thing that would set you free? Because here's what Haggai discovered about human nature, and that's still true today. He told these successful but struggling people in Haggai chapter 1, "You have sown much and bring in little. You eat, but you have not enough. You drink, but you are not filled with drink. You clothe yourselves, but there is none warm. And he that earns wages to put into a bag with holes. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider your ways." Does that sound like anyone you know? You're putting in the work, planting much, but the harvest feels small compared to the effort. You're busy all the time, but you never feel like you're getting ahead. You make good money, but somehow it disappears as fast as you earn it. You know you're busy, but you're not sure you're productive. Here's the thing that a lot of business owners miss. When your effort does not match your results, it's usually not because you need to work harder, it's likely because you're working on the wrong things. So let me tell you about hurt versus harm. And I learned this from the book Boundaries by Henry Cloud and John Townsend. And when you go to the dentist and he fixes a cavity, it hurts you, but it doesn't harm you. It actually helps you. But when you eat sugar and let it settle in your teeth, it doesn't hurt you, but it does harm you long term. Most people avoid the hurt and end up living with the harm. And your business works the same way. That difficult conversation with the underperforming employee, that hurts for an hour, but it saves you months of frustration. Raising your prices, that hurts for a day, but it transforms your profit margins forever. And building systems instead of doing everything yourself, well, it hurts for a few weeks, but it gives you your life back. And paying someone else to do a task hurts your bank account today, but it frees you up to bring in more money in the future. But here's what you do instead. You avoid the temporary hurt of making hard decisions. So you live with the permanent harm of being overwhelmed, underpaid, and overworked. You know what needs to change, but you've convinced yourself it's not that bad yet, just like that dog in the nail. Now, I went through this exact process when I needed to lose some weight. I was carrying around 50 extra pounds. Really didn't hurt in the moment. I could still function, still work, still provide for my family, but it was harming me every single day. My energy was low, my confidence was low, my health was in decline. The hurt of changing my diet and walking consistently, that was real. That was daily. That was uncomfortable. But you know what? I lost about 50 pounds in 6 months. And that temporary hurt eliminated the permanent harm. Now I'm starting another journey of strength training to gain muscle. And it hurts, but if I don't, then in another couple of decades, I may not even be able to lift myself off a chair. And that's the real harm. So, you see, here's where most people get stuck. They look at the immediate discomfort of change and then they compare it to the gradual comfort of staying the same. But that's not really a fair comparison. You need to compare the temporary hurt of changing with the permanent harm of staying stuck. Because when you do that, the choice becomes obvious. And here's what Haggai was really saying to those people. Your efforts feel futile because you're focusing on the wrong priorities. You're avoiding the thing that God is calling you to do because it feels too hard, too risky, too uncomfortable. But that avoidance is exactly why you feel like you're putting money into a bag with holes. That's why you work hard, but you harvest little. That's why your success feels hollow. The Israelites in Haggai's time had started building the temple, God's house, his priority. But when the opposition came, they stopped. They convinced themselves that they'd get back to it later, when they had more time, more resources. They get back to it when it felt easier. Maybe that sounds familiar because they built this foundation, but then after the opposition came, 14 years passed. 14 years of working on everything except what mattered most. 14 years of sowing much and harvesting little. 14 years of living in their houses while God's house laid in ruins. So here's a question that will change everything. What temple have you started but abandoned? What calling have you put on hold because it got uncomfortable? What nail are you sitting on because it doesn't hurt quite bad enough yet? Because here's what happened next in Haggai's story that most people don't hear about. When Haggai delivered God's message, the people didn't argue. They didn't make excuses. They didn't even say they'd think about it. The Bible says in verse 12 that they obeyed the voice of their Lord their God, and the people feared before the Lord. And within 24 days, they were back to work on the temple. And they stayed stuck for 14 years, but then got going in just 24 days. They actually made the decision that day, but I'm guessing it took some time to get the plans in place and materials start being gathered, things like that. Here's what I've learned from talking with tons of business owners. The thing you're most afraid to do is usually the thing that's going to set you free. But you've convinced yourself you're not ready yet. You need more time, more money, more certainty. My business mentor, Myron Golden, he always says this: disruption always follows intention. The moment you decide to do something significant, opposition shows up. It's not a sign that you're on the wrong track. Instead, it's confirmation that you're actually on the right track. The Israelites experienced this firsthand. They decided to rebuild the temple, and immediately the neighbors started complaining. And that account can be found in Ezra chapters 3 and 4. The local government, was involved. People questioned their motives. The work slowed down, and eventually it stopped altogether. And it stayed stopped for 14 years. But here's the thing about opposition. It reveals what you really believe about your calling. If you stop when things get hard, you really didn't believe it was what you were supposed to do in the first place. You were just hoping it would be easy. I mean, how many times have you started something important, but then quit when it got uncomfortable? How many times have you had a clear sense of direction, but abandoned it the moment that you faced resistance? You convinced yourself the disruption meant you were wrong. But what if instead it actually meant that you were right? So think about your business right now. What's the one change you know you need to make, but you haven't yet? What's the conversation that you need to have? What's the system that you need to build? What's the person you need to hire or fire? You've been living in your house, working on your own priorities while staying stuck and not working on what you know you need to be doing. You tell yourself you'll get to it eventually. Maybe you'll have more cash flow, or maybe when the timing is better. But here's what 14 years taught the Israelites: timing never gets better. The cash flow never feels sufficient. Business never slows down enough to work on what really matters. You have to make the decision to prioritize your calling, what you need to do, over your comfort. You have to choose the temporary hurt of doing hard things over the permanent harm of staying stuck. So here's the question that changed everything for me. If I kept doing exactly what I'm doing now, where will I be in 3 years? Now, if that answer doesn't excite you, then you need to make a change. Many people won't make that change because they're afraid of the unknown. They'd rather deal with the familiar problems than unfamiliar solutions. They'd rather sit on that nail. The Israelites lived in their houses for 14 years while God's house laid in ruins. Or maybe you don't feel it's external resistance. Instead, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you stop just on the verge of a big success because you're concerned of what that will mean for you and how it would change your life. You don't want to go through the hurt of unfamiliar growth. But here's what Haggai revealed about the real cost of avoiding your calling. It's not that you just don't grow. It's not that you just stay stuck. It's that everything else in your life suffers too. When you avoid doing what you know you need to do, it creates a ripple effect that touches every area of your life. Your relationships suffer because you're constantly distracted by what you're not doing. Your confidence erodes because you know you're not living up to your potential. And your energy drops because you're carrying the weight of all these undone decisions. That's the hidden harm of avoiding temporary hurt. But here's what a lot of people don't realize: the pain that you're avoiding isn't just going to stay at the same level, it's going to get worse. The nail the dog is sitting on is just going to rust, it's going to dig deeper. The employee you're avoiding to fire isn't just staying mediocre, they're actively damaging your culture and costing you good people. The prices you're avoiding to raise aren't just keeping you at the same profit level, they're actually making you work harder for less while your costs continue to increase. The system you're avoiding to build isn't just keeping you busy, it's preventing you from scaling, and it's trapping you in the job that you created for yourself instead of in a business that works without you. And every day you delay, that harm compounds. I see this all the time. Business owners have been sitting on the same nail for years. They've convinced themselves it's not that bad. They've normalized the dysfunction. They've adjusted to the pain. But when we start peeling back the layers, we discover the real cost, the missed opportunities, the damaged relationships, the health problems from stress, the guilt about not being present with families, the resentment towards the business that was supposed to give them freedom. Now, the Lord, through Haggai, said, consider your ways. So stop and actually look at where your current path is leading you. Don't just consider where you are today, consider where you'll be if nothing changes. Consider your ways. The Israelites had gotten comfortable just seeing the foundation of the unfinished temple. They walked past it every day. They stopped seeing it. It became normal, background noise. What have you stopped seeing in your business? What dysfunction have you normalized? What pain have you adjusted to instead of addressing? Because here's the truth about change that nobody really wants to hear. It's not going to get easier. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes. The nail gets rustier, the habit gets stronger, the fear gets bigger. But here's the truth about action that will set you free. The moment you stop avoiding the hurt and start moving towards what you know you need to do, everything begins to shift. Now, Alex Hormozy says, it's not that it takes a long time to do something, it just takes some people a long time to finally decide they're going to do it. Myron says, stop getting ready to get ready. The moment you have that difficult conversation, you hire that new person, you build that system, you raise those prices, you fire that client, the energy that you've been wasting on avoidance gets redirected towards progress. But you have to actually make the decision. You have to actually choose the temporary hurt over the permanent harm. So here's my question for you. What would your business look like 1 year from now if you finally did the thing you've been avoiding? What would your family look like? What would your stress level be? What would your bank account look like? How many more people would you be able to help? Now, here's the harder question. What will your business look like 1 year from now if you don't choose hurt over harm? What will your relationships look like then? What will your health look like? What will your regret level actually be? Because the choice is yours. You can keep sitting on that nail, telling yourself it doesn't hurt that bad, or you can decide that today is the day. Today's the day that you finally move. Because here's what I've learned as I took steps in my own life and businesses when making this transition. The anticipation of the pain is always worse than the actual pain. Always. You've been sitting on that nail so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to not be in pain. You've normalized the dysfunction. You've adjusted to mediocrity. You've convinced yourself that this is just how business works, but it's not. The Lord's message was simple. Consider your ways. Look at where your current path is leading, and if you keep doing what you're currently doing, where will you be in 3 years? The Israelites stayed stuck for 14 years because they chose familiar pain over unfamiliar growth. They lived while ignoring what they knew they should be doing. They worked hard and they were never satisfied. And the money they earned was like putting it in bags with holes. So don't let that be your story. Remember the difference between hurt and harm. The dentist hurts you, but helps you. The sugar doesn't hurt, but it does harm you. The employee you need to fire, the prices that you need to raise, the systems that you need to build, the decisions you need to make, yes, that will hurt temporarily. But avoiding it is causing permanent harm. So here's your choice. You can keep sitting on that nail, telling yourself it doesn't hurt that bad yet, or you decide that today is the day that you finally move. The question isn't whether you know what to do. You do. The question is whether you're finally ready to do it or not. Now, you can find the book Boundaries along with over 30 other books I highly recommend to entrepreneurs. The list of books have shaped how I think about business and life. And you can find that at chd.to/AMZ. And the book Boundaries will change how you think about difficult decisions. And if this video resonated with you, check out my Unlocking Fulfillment playlist, because here's the thing. Getting off the nail isn't just about business success. It's about finally living the life that you were meant to live. So I'll see you in the next video.